What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and today we're gonna once again discuss some of the goings-ons regarding the PRO Act. So I went on a search on Google. You know what? Before we get into all of that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, drop a comment, and share these videos. Let's grow the channel. Got that out of the way. So I was doing an internet search and I was like, man, I want to find out what the arguments against the PRO Act would be, because I don't want to just look at, everybody trying to sell me what's great about it. I want to see somebody arguing the this bill sucks point of view. And I found this article on JD Supra. It's from March 16th, 2021, and it's titled "The Cons of the PRO Act." It's by an author named, a lawyer named Thomas Scroggins. But check this out and tell me that this isn't the best sales pitch for the PRO Act. Watch this. Here we go. The Protecting the Right to Organize Act of 2021, also known as the PRO Act, is back with its laundry list of organized labor's most wanted government handouts. After decades of declining membership, unions see the PRO Act as a way to energize their roles of dues-paying members by making it much easier for unions to organize in the modern workplace and restrain the ability of employers to fend off organizing drives. The U.S. House of Representatives passed it on to the Senate last week by a vote of 225 to 206. Citing concerns about a shrinking middle class, income inequality, and economic insecurity for families, the AFL-CIO has hailed the PRO Act as the most significant worker empowerment legislation since the Great Depression. It would make many radical changes to long-standing labor law and election processes. The following are the highlights. He has highlights in quotes, by the way, because he doesn't agree with it. So he's like, the following are the highlights. This is amazing. Joint Employer Standard. The PRO Act would codify the joint employer standards set forth in the NLRB's 2015 Browning-Ferris decision, making it much more likely that two or more employers would be considered joint employers of a worker assigned by an employment or temporary agency. The board in Browning-Ferris held that indirect or reserved control could be considered to determine joint employer status, as opposed to just direct control or control exercised in fact. The indirect or reserved control standard would put many businesses in jeopardy of being deemed joint employers by virtue of contractual provisions in agreements with professional employer organizations and temporary labor agencies and in franchise agreements. Here's the other one. He got this one as a negative too. The elimination of right to work. That's a horrible thing. Oh my God. Why would we want to get rid of right to work? Elimination of right to work. The act would allow bargaining agreements to require payment of dues by all represented employees, upending state laws that let employees opt out of union membership and dues obligations. How's that a bad thing? Here you go. Let's get another one. Captive audience meetings. The act would prohibit small group meetings where employees are compelled and paid to attend so that they can learn about unions, long a staple of employer strategy during union election campaigns. Attendance at such meetings would become voluntary. Oh, the horror. Employees versus independent contractors. The act would expand the definition of employee to allow workers currently classified as independent contractors to form and join unions. That would be your Uber drivers and those type of jobs. The act would adopt California's ABC test in determining whether a worker was an employee or an independent contractor. This would essentially make every worker who performs work in the usual course of business of the company an employee instead of an independent contractor. Use of company resources for organizing. The act would allow employees to use company computers, email, internet access, telephones, etc. to communicate with coworkers for union organizing purposes. This is definitely a pro-business article. No permanent replacement of strikers. Imagine that. You can't replace strikers? That's terrible. The act would prohibit the permanent replacement of workers who participate in strikes. Under current law, employers can permanently replace workers who go on economic strikes, subject to preferential recall rights. No lockouts. The act would prohibit employer-initiated work stoppage designed to influence the position of employees or their bargaining agents before a strike. There would be fewer supervisors. The act would tighten the test for determining which employees are supervisors within the meaning of the National Labor Relations Act. Under the PRO Act, an employee would not be a supervisor unless the supervisory activities were conducted for a majority of the individual's work time. The act would also eliminate, assign, and responsibility to direct employees from the NLRA list of supervisory duties. The effect would be to classify more employees as non-supervisory and thus eligible to join a union, particularly team leaders or line leaders. Excelsior list. Under the PRO Act, employers would be required to provide to the union the list of eligible voters within a mere 2 days from the date that an election is directed. This list must include names, work locations, shifts, job classifications, home addresses, home telephone numbers, cell phone numbers, work email addresses, and personal email addresses. So now the employer wouldn't be able to actively try to stifle the process of trying to organize and have an election. First, contract negotiations and arbitration. The PRO Act would require the employer and the union to begin bargaining within 10 days of the union's request, following certification of the union as a collective bargaining agent. Then, if no agreement has been reached after 120 days, a 3-member arbitration panel would decide the terms of a 2-year collective bargaining agreement. No class collective action waivers. Employers would be prohibited from entering into class or collective action waivers with employees or enforcing the waivers. Private right of action for NLRA claims. The PRO Act would allow employees to sue employers directly for alleged violations of the NLRA and recover punitive damages and attorney's fees. Currently, an employee must file an unfair labor practice charge with the National Labor Relations Board, which can prosecute the charges in administrative proceedings. The PRO Act now heads to the Senate, where its future seems far from certain. And remember, this article was written more than a year ago, and it is still far from certain. It's certainly not moving forward yet. Democrats will have to muster a number of Republican votes or eliminate the filibuster to push this through. If it passes in the Senate, President Biden has said he will sign it as part of his promise to be the nation's most pro-union president. I'll tell you what, he signs this bill into law, he will be just that, the most pro-union president. But there you have it. That's an article telling you all the cons of the PRO Act. And as I read it, all I'm reading is positive information. So it's funny to me. Anyway, I hope you got a kick out of that. You guys have a good one. Remember, the fight's not left and right, it's up and down, and it's going to take solidarity to win always. Each one teach one, get out there and reach one. Peace out.